you focus on me.
Inspection, and just to be like, nope, it's all you. You've always been sensitive. You've always been this. So it's got to be miserable to be that defensive. It's got to be miserable to be more into your own pride and hubris than to look at yourself, to look at patterns. Because at the end of the day, how miserable is it to have your children not talk to you and you're sitting alone going like, well, I was right the whole time. That's got to be just horrific.
Welcome back to my channel. My name is Giselle Lenya. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on your bell notifications so you don't miss a post. In today's episode, we'll be hearing why some people choose to go no contact with their loved ones. So I'll be sharing my personal journey and my decision to go no contact with my mother. Stay tuned as I open up about the reasons behind this choice and the impact it's had on my life. Let's get started.
I went completely no contact with my mother when I was 22 years old, and I never budged on it, not for over 25 years. I get a lot of people reaching out to me asking me for ways to explain to the other family members why they need to go no contact. And people think that because I'm really good with words that somehow I'm going to be able to say it in a way that it's going to get people to stop going, but she's your mother. And I just want to be clear that there is no way that you're going to be able to explain this to people who don't want to understand. Like, my mother was heinous, and everyone knew what she did, and everyone knew who she was, and that she would be abusing me again. And even then they would say, but just come over for a holiday or send her a Mother's Day card. I believe there's a lot of reasons why people do this, mainly because I think people fear having other people set boundaries with them, or that they don't want to have to self-reflect and actually take action against their own family. Going no contact is exceptionally hard no matter how justified it is. I don't think it should be taken lightly. And I think you should just be prepared to not be supported and to do it anyways. They don't need to understand for it to be healthy for you. Don't be nice.
More time that passes, I realized how much our parents actually did not want to be parents. So like a couple of years ago, me and my mom had got into it, and my dad, trying to, talk on her behalf, took me outside and was like, you seem to forget that your mom raised you up. She used to clothe you. She used to feed you. Kind of trying to tell me that I owed her something because of that. And it was like, wasn't this your choice to have a kid? You had me. That's what you were supposed to do. And if you didn't do that, CPS would have been on your ass. Like, you're not, again, you get no gold star for doing what you're supposed to do. I'm supposed to take care of my baby. I had him. Who else is supposed to do it?
To be fair, the only reason that I even told my mother that I was done with her instead of just cutting her off was because I knew that saying it would set it into stone. Me and my mother have been going back and forth on this shit since I became an adult, of us talking and not, because she'll do some fuck-ass shit that'll piss me off, and I will separate myself from her for the time being, and then we'll go like a month or so without talking, and then she'll text me or call me and be like, are you still mad at me? She never actually apologized, but I would always forgive her, and we would start talking again, and things would be fine, and then she would do some again, and the cycle continued. So I knew that telling her straight up that I didn't want anything to do with her and listing off all of the reasons why I didn't want anything to do with her anymore, that would pump the brakes on all of this. Because I know me, and I also know my mother. My mother does not have to be told more than once that she is not welcome somewhere. Once she is told straight up, I don't want to be around you anymore, she'll take it and she'll run with it. So I knew that when she read that paragraph, she would know that I wasn't around and I was actually done with her ass. I also know me. If I give her an outlet to have any sort of access towards me again and she takes it, I'm going to be looped back into the cycle again. A lot of people have commented like, how did you still have a relationship with her like past your 18th birthday? You have to understand the type of dynamic that we had. She was the only stable parental figure that I had in my life, and so it was very, very difficult to let that go. And she had conditioned me to believe that anytime she was mad at me was because I did something wrong, not because she was being a shitty parent. And so I was constantly trying to fix myself so that I could be better for her. The day that I realized that it was not me and that it was her that was being a shitty parent and that she needed to step the fuck up and fix herself, that was when everything changed. But at this point, there's no possible way for her to fix our relationship. There is no possible way for her to get back in my life. It's too late now. But I wanted to make sure that she knew that, and that also I knew that. I love my mother with my entire heart, and it breaks my soul to not have a relationship with her, regardless of all of the shit that she has done. But I had to realize that me loving her wasn't enough to keep her in my life. I had the same problem in relationships. I would stay in relationships for so long because I loved them, knowing that it was a shitty situation that I could not continue to be in because I stayed in that relationship with my mother. So now I'm learning if someone is treating you like a piece of shit, they're going to continue to treat you like a piece of shit. Get the fuck out. And be very stern about getting the fuck out. Me sitting that paragraph and explaining to her all the ways that she hurt me and that I never want to see her again, that was my first time standing up for myself, but not the last.
Stop telling people who are no contact with their parents that they need to either make things right.
I think what a lot of people miss is that a lot of us didn't actually want to go no contact with our parents. We were forced to, because when a parent puts a child in a position where the child has to choose themselves and their mental health over the emotional, physical, spiritual damage that's being done to the child by the parent, it's one of the most difficult decisions that an individual can make. And I think it's really important to note that a lot of us understand the trauma that our parents went through prior to having us. We understand that they didn't have the resources that we have now. We understand that they didn't grow up the way that we have grown up with them. But all we have ever asked of them is to stop treating us as if what they've done to us has had no impact on us, especially when we've taken the time to understand how their lives and their parents have impacted them. I told my mother directly that I would rather be homeless on the street with nothing and have a healthy relationship with her than have her speak to me and treat me the way that she has. And it still didn't click for her. I went through some of the worst losses in my life, and she mocked the entire situation. So for me, when a parent kicks a child when they're at the low points that I have faced, you forced me to go no contact with you, because at that point, contact with you is causing me physical harm. A lot of people don't understand that a lot of us have very internal reactions to the hurt and pain that our parents have caused us that manifests itself in a physical nature. For me, I start shaking, I get night sweats, I start having panic attacks. It affects me to the point where I can't even mentally focus. And this has shown up in a plethora of my relationships, romantic relationships with partners who mirrored behavior of my parents, specifically my mother and my father. Well, yeah, those are my parents. I mean, I don't claim them. Anyway, what I'm saying is people have to push a lot of us to the point of no contact, because a lot of us want those very relationships that you guys are telling us that we need. That's your mom, that's your dad, that's your husband, that's your sister, that's your auntie, that's your uncle. Okay, and who am I? Who am I? Do I not matter in this equation? Because if I'm not going to matter to you, them, I have to matter to myself. Like, I can't just continue to put everyone ahead of me. And that's why a lot of us have chosen to go no contact. And there are plenty of us that are not going to come back for the inheritance because we never needed your money. We wanted your love, respect, kindness, protection, care. That's what we wanted. And I'm not saying that money doesn't matter, because it does, but what mattered more was love and respect from my parents, not what they gave me. And I've been an empath and a people pleaser. So, you know, if I had to cut somebody off, I had to be pushed there, because doormats put up with everything
that I've been posting. And I don't take this situation lightly, but I went no contact with my mother recently, and I want to share the reasons behind it. So for as long as I can remember, I yearned for a meaningful relationship with my mother. However, what I received instead was a barrage of abuse, negativity, and neglect. And despite my efforts to foster a connection, the reality is that the toxicity overweighed any positive memories. So I reached a point where I could no longer subject myself or my family to the lack of respect and consistent negativity. Enduring endless phone calls filled with criticism and regret has taken its toll on my mental and emotional well-being. While I just don't know yet if I will continue to keep this contact temporary or permanent, what I know is that it's necessary for my own peace and happiness. Life is too short to endure toxic relationships, even with family. So moving forward, I've committed to prioritizing my mental health and creating a positive environment for myself, my children, and my loved ones. So, if you're struggling with similar circumstances, I want you to know that you're not alone. It's okay to set boundaries and prioritize your own well being, even when it means distancing yourself from family members. Remember that your mental health matters and you deserve to surround yourself with love and positivity. Stay strong and know that brighter days are ahead. I invite you to share your own experiences and thoughts in the comment sections below. Your stories matter, and by sharing, we can create a supportive community where we uplift and empower each other.
If you are no contact with a parent or are in a situation where you want to be no contact with a parent, I'm going to give some advice from my personal experience in dealing with this. And now, since my mom has passed, because I think there's a lot of stigma around, you know, you're going to regret this when your parents die. And my mom told me that my whole life. Like, you're going to regret every time you've talked to me, whatever the way, like when I die. And the fact of the matter is that I don't feel that way. The night that my mom passed away, I actually had like nightmares and like couldn't sleep and my head was spinning because I was thinking about, I was like, I just need to tell her how much she's hurt me because I've never had that conversation with her. And anytime I brought it up before, she'll just, you know, tell me that I'm wrong and I was a bad child, and that's the end of that, right? Which was years ago. I was on a road trip with my husband and I was like, you know what, I'll just call her on the way home tomorrow. It's a 2-hour ride. I'll let her know how I feel. You know, if she dies, at least I got this off my chest. And I actually am happy that I didn't. I got a call in the morning before we left that she had passed away. And I'm really happy I didn't call her. And like, this was like a struggle I was going with myself for like an entire week. Like, I was like, oh my God, I just really need to like tell her like she's gonna die and I'm never gonna get like the apology or like the acknowledgement of like how hard my life was. And I'm glad I didn't have that conversation because I actually feel now that it's been like 2 months since she passed that I think now that I would have regretted saying those things and I would have regretted probably the conversation, and like that would have been our last conversation that we ever had. So I don't know. I guess my reason for sharing this is just to say that like, don't let anyone make you feel bad about being no contact or minimal contact, or, you know, because you may actually regret the interactions that you have with that person.
Watch a video together and then chat about it.
When I feel like I was a good mom and did everything I can to show my kids I loved them and be there for them. And why does this generation of kids just turn their back on their parents? Like, I would never treat my parents the way some of the things have been said to me from my kids. And I don't understand it. And it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. My friends, patients that I see at work, you know, story after story after story after, you know, my daughter doesn't talk to me, my son doesn't talk to me, like, just so much entitlement these days. And it's just so flippin' heartbreaking. Like, it was so much easier when the kids were little. Like, I just didn't think that my life would be where it's at 50. I love my kids, but why is it this hard? Why, where's the respect at for parents and appreciation for all they've done for you your entire life? Like, I don't get it.
The concept of no contact has been going around a lot lately, and so I want to answer this question genuinely as a therapist who sees a lot of clients who have got no contact. I think one of the largest things to recognize as a parent of an adult child is generational differences. So for starters, people who are in their 50s, 60s plus who have adult children grew up in a generation where it was very common for children to be seen, not heard, and respect equated to just acquiescing to whatever your parents kind of wanted. Respect often meant you didn't have boundaries, whereas mental health now is and continues to be a large conversation. Relationships with family members are one of the only relationships in which people are encouraged to make amends with people who have been abusive towards them, who have manipulated them, who consistently cross their boundaries, etc. And as a therapist, what I often hear in these situations is that from the child's perspective, there's been multiple attempts to repair the relationship, to explain the behaviors that are hurtful and harmful, yet the behaviors continue. Or there just isn't the safety or the space to have that discussion in the first place. Another thing is that in terms of gratitude for the parent taking care of them or just, creating them, I think that is often seen to be synonymous with, I will have a relationship with you forever. Someone can be grateful for their life, for their parents, for the efforts that have been made, but also decide that a relationship is not for them. And that isn't to take away from the fact that I imagine that it's very hurtful for parents. And at the same time, what also exists is that it's hurtful typically for the child to go no contact as well. But while it's typically hurtful for the child to make that decision, it's also often safer from their perspective to make that decision. I think it's important to come to these conversations with the sense that you are not entitled to a relationship with your child just because you birthed them. It is something that you have to earn and continuously work at. And that goes both ways.
If you can't even decenter your mom, what make you think that you can decent?
So I started decentering my mom at 12 or 13 years old. And right now we're no contact. Over the last couple years, we've spoken a handful of times. But I know a lot of people can't really fathom not talking to their parents and going no contact. But let me tell you just a few of the things that my mom has done over the years that has led us to where we are at today. So I went to a music school in elementary school. So they would start us off kind of like doing the basic instruments like the recorder and the xylophone and things like that. And as we would get older and move up in grade level, we would be assigned, or not be assigned, but you would get to choose an instrument that you want to keep and practice and become proficient at by the time you graduate 5th grade. So my mom has always been a huge fan of the piano. She's always wished that she could be like an amazing piano player. My eldest brother plays piano pretty well, and he's even tried to teach my mom several times, and it just never takes. Like, she just can't learn it. And that's not like a diss at her. It's just some people just can't learn music. So she has always wished that she could be really good at piano. And when she eventually gave up on piano, she of course tried to push that dream onto me, as a lot of parents do. When they fail at something or they don't accomplish something, they want their children to do it. And it seemingly comes from a good place, but you're also like crushing your child's dream and not listening to your child when they tell you that's not their dream, that's not their goal. So she was like, you should choose piano, you should choose piano. I'm like, I don't want to play the piano. At this point, I had already been playing the clarinet for about a year. So I was getting pretty good at the clarinet. I was starting to be able to read music and just kind of finding my footing in music. But I 1000% knew I did not want to play the piano. So I remember one day, my parents sat me down. It was mostly my mom talking because my dad just kind of goes with whatever she says. But they sat me down and she was like, we're taking you out of clarinet lessons. And I just, like, my heart sank because I just knew, I had a feeling it was coming, because she was so gung-ho about me playing the piano. So she was like, we're taking you out. There's nothing you can do about it. And I just was crying. I was like, please don't take me out of clarinet. I've already been in for a year. Like, this makes no sense. So the school year starts, and one day my mom comes to the school and she lies to the principal and my clarinet teacher and tells them that I have asthma and that I can't play the clarinet anymore. So they basically took me out because of that. Because usually once you choose an instrument, there's no getting out of it really. So they had to come up with some medical excuse for me to not be able to play. That's also not the first time she's tried to lie to one of my teachers or one of my coaches about a medical condition just to get me not to do something that she didn't like. Y'all, she was so obsessed with piano, it was actually crazy. I remember late middle school, probably early high school, I started getting pretty serious into sports, and I was on club teams and things like that. And, you would have the club fees that would come up. And I remember one of the fees came up, it was about $150 or so. And my mom absolutely refused to pay. She was just like, I don't care about that sport. I don't want you to play in the first place. Like, why would I pay for it? So it was around tax return season when these fees came up. And when she got her tax returns, she bought an electric piano, like one of those that you can plug in, but those still run at least they're around $1,500 or so. And she bought one of those, and nobody in my home played piano. She didn't know how to play. Like, it just sat there for years. It's still there at their house. So it's just like the priorities, it was crazy. And this video is way too long now, so I'm gonna have to make another one with the other things that she has done. I just woke up. Let's get into part 2. I've been seeing a lot of comments like this, people saying, oh, that's not that bad, you cut your mom off just for that. You guys are not gonna trick me into bearing my soul on the internet. I know my truth, and there are things far worse than I'm ever gonna tell you here, but I will tell you the things that I'm comfortable with people knowing. Around 13 years old, my mom found a home church in the new state that we had moved to. My mom is a Bible thumper. She's one of those like slap you in the face with the Bible. And so anything that does not go with what she believes to be true or what's in the Bible is like, it's evil to her. You're the devil. You are the most evil thing to exist. So me being somebody who's never been super religious, even as a child, I always questioned things that happened in the church. And my mom absolutely hated that. So when she found this new home church in our new state, she became one of like the church elders. She kind of like, you know, made her way in the church, and people knew her, and she just was one of the respected elders in the church. Christmas rolls around, and she decides to buy Christmas gifts for like a bunch of the kids in the church. There were kids like 10 and under, and she bought a bunch of Christmas gifts, okay? Guess how many gifts were under our tree at home? 0. We got nothing that year. And even other years, we got nothing. But this year specifically, I will always remember because she spent her hard-earned money on kids she just met. Mind you, we just moved to the state. She just got established at this church, and she was buying gifts for other people's kids, and we got nothing. She actually even asked me to help her wrap these gifts because I'm really good at wrapping gifts and stuff. I actually enjoyed it, but yeah, I wrapped these gifts for other children, and we got nothing that year. Another thing that my mom loves to do is like call people evil or call things evil. And I've always taken it very seriously because I am a spiritual person, so I believe in like evil spirits and, you know, just evil things being out in the universe, bad energy and things like that. So I take it very seriously when people talk about like just, you know, evilness and wickedness and things like that. So my mom was very quick to say things like, oh, I'm gonna curse that person or put a curse on them. Or she'll say like, oh, I had a dream that this person is evil or this and that. And so she would just like speak things into the universe that would like kind of pierce your heart type things. Like she just knew how to, she was very divisive with her words, and she just knew how to say certain things to trigger you. So one time we're all driving as a family to like some sort of event, and I have a family of 9, so we all packed into my mom's Ford Explorer, and she was driving. Me, my sister, and my younger brother were in like the farthest back row, and my sister and I were like giggling about something. You know, we're just being sisters, like laughing about something. We're kids, like I was probably 7, she was probably like 12, and we're giggling, we're laughing about something. And out of the blue, my mom is like, look at them. They sound so evil. They sound like witches laughing back there. And that pierced my heart. Like the way she said it was so evil and so like she wanted it to her. She was like, they're just so evil. They sound like witches. They're so nasty. And we were kids, literally little girls laughing about like, I can't even remember what we were talking about, but just laughing about something so innocent. So she would always just say these like evil things, and it's just like, why do you hate me? Like, what is the problem? This is part 3 of why I went no contact with my mom. So the last time that we spoke was this last October of 2023. And that interaction in itself will reiterate her character and will tell you why we are no contact. So I've given her multiple chances. I've gone no contact before for maybe a year or 2, and then I'll let her back in, give her another chance. She'll repeat the same behaviors, and we'll keep repeating that cycle. So the most recent time that happened, I saw her this last October, and before that, I hadn't seen her for about a year and a half. okay? I had not seen her face to face for a year and a half. So she calls me on a Thursday night one day and says, hey, I'm flying into your city for a church conference. It's gonna be Friday. I land Friday around 6 p.m. Can you pick me up from the airport? So I'm immediately like, I can't do that. I work until 5:30. If you all know Texas traffic, there's just no way I would make it there on time. By the time I could get from where I work to the airport, it would be like 7 p.m., 7:30. So I just said, I'm not able to do that. I wish you would have gave me more notice. So that way we could plan something, we could have lunch, have dinner, like I could clear my schedule so we could talk, hang out, whatever. So her giving me such little notice already told me that she wasn't serious about seeing me or having conversation with me. She just wanted a ride from the airport. So Friday rolls around, the day of her flight, and she calls me again asking if I can pick her up. And I said, I'm at work. I can't pick you up. I'm sorry. And that is how our weekend started. She had a bad attitude after that. She just was like upset at me for not dropping everything to come get her. So after she called me that Friday, we didn't talk at all that night. The next morning I get a text and it's a screenshot of a flyer for the church event that she's going to. And she's like, you should come to this. And like I told you guys before, I'm not super religious. Like I've never been a church goer really. And so I was like, you know what? I'm not really feeling it. Like, I don't really want to go. I already had a bad feeling about it. So she's like begging me, just like, please come, please come. So I was like, okay, I'll come just because I haven't seen her in a long time. Like, let's see if she's changed. Let's see, you know, what her attitude is like. I pull up to her hotel because I was picking her up so we could go to the second day of the event, which was that Saturday. So I pull up to her hotel, and when I get up to her hotel room, the first thing she says, mind you, we had not seen each other face to face for a year and a half. She's like, do you have any perfume? I forgot mine. Like there was no, hey, how you doing? No hugs, like nothing. Like she was like immediately asking for stuff. So I had like a mini like sample perfume that I carry in my purse. So I gave it to her to use. And then, you know, we kind of started talking a little bit, but it was still very surface level. Just like, how you been? How's work? Blah, blah, blah. So when we get to the church, this is when things start to go left. So the crazy thing is the sermon just so happened to be on forgiveness. So I was like, you know what? Perfect. Let me see if she's actually going to be listening and absorbing what the pastor is saying about forgiveness, because she has a lot to be forgiven for. Y'all, I'm actually getting PTSD thinking about this. So we're sitting at the front row of this conference. It's a whole church, full church. And we're like at the I think we're at the second row, because the first row is usually like reserved for pastors and deacons, you know, the people who are like the higher ups in the church. And we were like right after that row, so we could make eye contact with the pastor and everything. And so he starts doing this like, if you go to church, anyone who's like a church goer knows this, like when they are kind of prophesying about people who are in the audience and stuff. And he's just picking random people and saying, you know, God told me that this is going on with you. God told me that you need to forgive this person, you know. So he was kind of like picking people out from the audience. So the pastor calls this lady from the crowd, and he's like, calls her to come up, and she comes up, and he's like, God is telling me that you came here with a family member who you have like, you know, you have beef with. Sorry, I don't know the terms, but he was like, y'all have like an issue and you need to forgive her for something. So the lady starts crying. She's like, yes, I came here with my sister. You know, we've been fighting for years and years, and we just need to forgive each other. So he calls the sister up, and then he kind of makes them like have a conversation. All this is happening in front of the church, and I'm sitting right there like watching. And as they're like talking to each other, they're hugging and they're like crying and stuff. I start crying because I just got emotional, because I was like, you know what? I love that. Like, I love that they were able to forgive each other. So yeah. As soon as a tear falls down my face, the pastor looked at me and saw, it was like he saw it as soon as I started crying, and he was like, why is that young lady crying in the front row? I was like, oh my God, no, please, like, do not call me up. I don't want to, no. So the pastor's like, come to the front. And I was like, like, I seriously told him no. I was like, I'm not coming to the front. And he had one of the, I don't know if it was like an usher or whatever, like come physically grab my arm. Y'all know how Africans are, like just like aggressive. And he grabbed my arm and like yanked me up to the front. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is so, like, this is too much. This is invasive. Like, I don't want to sit here and tell a bunch of strangers like what the beef is between my mom and I. So he like forced me to tell him, like, I just was like, you know, we just have issues. Like, there's a lot of forgiveness that needs to happen. I feel like she's not ready to accept or like to open up and apologize. So he calls my mom up and he's like, hug your mom. And so we're hugging. When we hugged, it was the coldest hug. I felt nothing. I was just like, my arms were limp. I'm like hugging her and I'm just like, this is so embarrassing. Like, everybody's watching me. Like, that's all I was thinking. And I was like, I know she like doesn't mean any of this. So then the pastor's like, tell your mom you love her. When I tell you, I felt like there was a golf ball in my throat. I could not say the words. Like, I was going to say it just to kind of appease him so that I could go back and sit down. And he's like, tell your mom you love her. Yeah, it was like, y'all seen that episode of SpongeBob when Squidward when Squidward has the fork in his throat and it's like going up and down? That's seriously how I felt. Like, I felt like I could not even swallow. And I just could not say the words. He asked me like 5 or 6 times, like, tell your mom you love her. And I was like, I just was stuck. I couldn't say it. So then my mom, she starts like fake crying. She was like making like the face and like the noise that she was crying, but it was no tears coming out. And she's like, I don't know what I did. I don't know what I did. I don't know what she could be so sad about. Like, I don't know what I did. So that happened. He finally let us sit down. I never told her that I loved her. Like, there was not, she didn't even really say like, I'm sorry or like anything. It was just like, the whole thing was very awkward. Nothing was accomplished. So after the church service ended, we had a private meeting with the pastor where we actually hashed out a lot of traumatic things. And my mom sat there and denied every single thing that I brought up in front of the pastor. And he looked at her and he said, why would your daughter lie about that? Like, what is she going to gain from lying to you about all these things that happened to her? He was like, why would she not want to have you in her life? And so he was on my side. He saw like right through my mom. Another thing that my mom was doing during this meeting, she was on her phone the entire time. She took a phone call in the middle of a meeting and I'm over here crying and like opening up and trying to get somewhere with her. And she's like over here on her phone. So, oh, 1 second, taking a call. Like, just doing all this like crazy. I was just like, yeah, this is the last time you're going to see me. And I remember I told her, I was like, right before I left the church building, I told her that this is it. Like, we're done. So that was the last time I saw my mom.
It's got to be miserable to be right all the time. And what I mean by that is many of us are working towards going no contact, or we're in the middle of no contact, or we're in the middle of a lot of nasty conversations or boundaries or fights, conversations about like how abusive the person was, the parent, the ex, whatever, the family member. And it's got to be miserable to not have any introspection and just to be like, nope, it's all you. You've always been sensitive. You've always been this. So it's got to be miserable to be that defensive. It's got to be miserable to be more into your own pride and hubris than to look at yourself, to look at patterns. Because at the end of the day, how miserable is it to have your children not talk to you and you're sitting alone going like, well, I was right the whole time. That's got to be just horrific.
Oh, imagine being a parent whose adult children cut all ties to you. They don't even speak to you anymore. They don't call you on your birthday. They don't plan anything for Mother's or Father's Day. They never even update you on your grandchildren's milestones. Refuse to come to your bedside when you're chronically ill. Never visit you in the nursing home. I mean, if they saw you in line at a Starbucks, they'd probably side-eye you for a minute and then pretend like they didn't even know you. All because you failed so fantastically, so monumentally at your job, your one job as the loving, supportive presence in their lives, that your children would rather dethrone you from quite arguably one of the most irreplaceable positions you could ever hold in another human being's life, voluntarily orphaning themselves, than spend one more millisecond of their time on Betty White's green earth, drowning themselves in your emotional immaturity. Couldn't be me.
Has anyone else noticed that when an adult child chooses to not have a relationship with a parent, it's always, but she's your mom, but he's your dad. You only have one dad, you only have one mom. And it's never, wow, what could a parent do to cause their child to make this decision? Or it's never, but they're your children. How could you treat your children that way? Why is it that the responsibility of the relationship is placed on the child. It's never, but they're your children. How could you treat your children that way?
Well, I was gonna throw this book away, but around page 18, 19, I'm only 20 pages in and I already want to throw it away because she's saying too much shit. Page 18, 19, she says that because we don't view children as having rights and as individual people the same way that we view women as needing rights, whereas women are able to advocate for their rights and mobilize, children are not, because they are at the mercy of the adults who may or may not try to assist them with what's going on in their home life, you know, meaning teachers or coaches or etc. And in the very beginning of this book, she talks about how she asked a bunch of grown-ass adults about, do y'all put y'all hands on y'all kids? And how casually the conversation was like, yeah, because it's good for them, da-da-da-da-da. And Bell Hooks says, but if we said, do you put your hands on women, it would have been a whole different conversation. And that goes back to the age-old conversation about, are children people or props? I rest my case, Your Honor.
Thank you for allowing me to share this deeply personal journey with you. If you found this video helpful or resonated with my experience or others in this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Let's continue to support each other on this journey of healing and self-discovery. God bless, stay safe, and see you next time. Bye!
Can you focus on me? Baby, can you focus on me?